Good evening. My name is Cecilia Thompson, the Member Services Manager here at BARC. We are here this evening for a session on cybersecurity, which will be presented and moderated by Sagicor Bank. Before we begin, I wish to share some housekeeping matters with you. This meeting will be recorded and shared on our YouTube channel, BARC Barbados. If you do not wish to be on camera, please turn your cameras off at this time. All microphones will be muted upon entry to this meeting. If you wish to ask a question, please wait for the question and answer segment at the end of the presentation and use the raise hand reaction feature at the bottom of your screen or pose your question in the chat. With that being said, I will hand over to our CEO, Mr. Steve Allen, to deliver his opening remarks. Thank you.
Thank you, Cecilia. Good evening, everyone. First of all, let me acknowledge my director, Scott Gall, who's on the call. I also like to acknowledge and thank Sagicor Bank for being here as our presenters. All other staff members from BARC, welcome to our first Zoom educational session for the calendar year 2025. BARC is grateful for this collaboration with our partner, Sagicor Bank, to educate the association and our members about cybersecurity and guide us on how to protect our computers, networks, devices, and data from digital attacks and unauthorized access. Some of our senior members are especially vulnerable because they are uncomfortable with technology and resistant to learning how to use it effectively. To keep up with swift changes, they rarely hand over their private information to family members or strangers who do not have their best interests at heart, and this leads to sometimes theft of their money. Now, as a pensioner, you know we are on fixed incomes, and therefore this becomes a devastating event for them because sometimes it hampers them from buying food, paying for medication, paying the utility bills, and sometimes this can even lead to subjective abuse or physical abuse. So at BARC, we are always willing to educate our members so that we can live, and our motto is aging healthy and living strong. But for those of us who like to use online, I think we still need to be aware of some points that affects us, and we have to be careful. So we need to be aware of financial scams, phishing emails that impersonate banks, government agencies, family members asking for money or personal information. You even have romance scams where fraudsters build online relationships to extract money. Fake tech support calls claiming they're coming to fix problems with your computer just to get your information. Investment scams promising unrealistic returns. I know that was in the news recently. Privacy and identity theft.
Hey, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It appears as if we have lost Steve. So I'm going to just give him a minute.
Okay, sorry about that. Are you sure what happened there? Can you hear me now?
Yes, we just lost some access to internet there. You can go again.
Yes, we definitely did.
Yeah,
Okay,
thank you.
I just continue from where I left off, just quickly to wrap up. At the micro level, we will continue these sessions for our senior members and our young members, those 40 to 59-year-olds who are looking after our older family members, friends, and neighbors, who will be able to protect themselves too when they get to the age of seniors. Just as importantly for all of us to be able to identify online threats and not only protect ourselves and those on our care, but be able to report them to the proper authorities. So I do, and I hope you do too as well, look forward to hearing from our partner, Sagicor Bank. And we do invite you to sit back, relax, and pay attention to what is very, very important topic. So over to you, Sagicor.
Thank you, Steve. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for having us today. We are more than grateful to be on this call with you.
Dwayne, you might be mute. We're not hearing you.
Okay. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now, yeah.
Okay, great. Did you hear anything that I said?
No, not only the beginning.
Okay. Okay, so I was really saying we're grateful to be here, and I want to say good evening, of course, to your Director Scott Galt, and to you, CEO of BARC Steve, your Member Services Manager Cecilia, and to all other members of the team from BARC and all the members from BARC who are here. We're so pleased to have so many of you on the call as we embark on the first session you guys are having for the year. So we're also grateful to be your first for the year and to talk about a very, very important topic, which is cybersecurity. In the room today, we have Michaela Catwell, who is on screen right now, and she is our head of cybersecurity and enterprise architecture. And who you may not be seeing in the room is also Mario Carter, who is our marketing and product associate. And so we're going to support by possibly fielding some of the questions that you may have, but Michaela is the star of the show this evening, and she will be presenting to you guys. I'm going to read a very short bio, so bear with me. Michaela Catwell is an IT professional with over 15 years experience, and she boasts a solid academic background from the New York Institute of Technology, where she completed both a bachelor's degree in computer science and a master's in information security, supported by a Barbados National Scholarship. Her career took off immediately after her studies, marking the beginning of a significant trajectory in the field of IT, particularly within the financial services sector in New York City. On her return to Barbados, she joined a Canadian-owned international bank, where for over 12 years, she advanced from a developer to become the head of user experience for digital and mobile applications. This period was marked by significant contributions to the bank's digital transformation, enhancing customer interfaces and overall user satisfaction. Her innovative work set new standards in digital banking services, demonstrating a profound understanding of the intersection between technology and user needs. Transitioning to Sagicor Bank, the first fully digital bank in the English-speaking Caribbean, she took on the role of client experience and product architect. Here, she has been pivotal in crafting and executing strategies that enhance user experience and innovate banking products to define the bank's reputation and as a forward-thinking leader in digital banking. Michaela, of course, moved on to be the head of cybersecurity and enterprise architecture thereafter. Michaela's career exemplifies a commitment to leveraging technology to improve banking experiences, underscoring a remarkable blend of technical expertise and visionary leadership in the digital era. So I will now hand over to Michaela, who will share with you on the topic of cybersecurity.
So good evening and welcome, everyone. It's a real pleasure to be here with you this evening to discuss this topic. And we're going to discuss how we're going to stay safe online and digitally. And, you know, as technology advances, scammers and cyber criminals are constantly finding new ways to target persons, especially those which they seem to think are the more vulnerable ones, the seniors. But our seniors of today are a little bit more knowledgeable and a more technology advanced group than those in the past. But yet there's still some ways and means folks will still try to get, you know, to you. And there are also some seniors who, well, they don't think they know a lot. They're, you know, a little bit uncomfortable in the space. But not to worry, by the end of tonight's session, we are hoping to be able to give you some knowledge, some tools in order for you to help protect yourself, personal information, and most definitely your personal finances online. So we're gonna get started. Okay, so the first way to safeguard yourself is really being able to recognize scams and frauds. So one thing that scammers are going to do, they're going to come to you and they're going to prey on what we consider to be our weakest points. And that usually is our trust and our emotions. So, you know, they're going to try to get to you. They're not going to come really hyper aggressive, which will automatically throw off a red flag. And they're going to use mechanisms in the digital space, like emails, phone calls, where we don't think of them as digital. Our primary source of connecting with persons verbally now is either via our phones or online meeting mechanisms such as this. And we do most of our commerce now online via websites and apps. And these are all tools that scammers, cyber criminals are going to use in order to trick and con folks into basically handing over your money to them or your personal details. And I'm pretty sure, I hope you can see the presentation that we have for you up. So we're going to start by looking at some of the most common ways by which folks target users in order to get access to their personal information. So we hear a lot about phishing. And phishing is a way that folks, fraudsters, will use emails pretending to be some sort of legitimate source. So it might be the bank or a government agency or a financial institution, insurance institution, or even like a relative or some person that you may know, in order for you to most likely select a link. And it will then take you to a website that might look familiar. And within the advent of AI, these websites become more and more duplicates of what you would find to be legitimate websites. In order for you to click on a link, enter personal information, and then they have their means by which they can access your online banking, they get your credit card information, identification information, whatever is necessary for them to go about to do their fraudulent activity. But in most recent times, we're now hearing of phishing and we're hearing of smishing. And phishing is a mechanism by which they will use phone calls. So as the CEO, sorry, apologies, I mentioned earlier, you have situations where persons may call and they may impersonate technical support persons. They may impersonate call center individuals, and they'll be calling and they'll be asking you personal information about your accounts. They might be calling you to verify something and ask you to, okay, so can you give me your ID number? Can you give me your account number? Can you give me your password? Can you give me your PIN? It's always good to know, as a rule of thumb off the bat, no reputable institution will ever cold call you and ask you for any of your personal information of any sort. So those are immediate red flags. Once you hear a person out of the blue just call you and ask you for anything like this, or you click on a link and it asks you to enter any information of the sort, or even a text message. I know there are text messages that persons will get for notifications related to things like orders, related to the things of the nature of banking, alerts. And if you select the links, at one point in time, they were like, don't click the link because it automatically triggers a download or a virus, and which is most possible. But now they're getting a bit step further, because disabling your device is not necessarily the key. It is actually getting access to your personal information and your personal data that is more useful to them, where they can either get access to your finances or use that information in order to complete identity theft. So the first thing to understand when you're looking to spot scammers there's certain triggers that they have. So for example, as I said, there's they come across very polite, they come across very professional, but there's always an underlying of urgency because they want to get the information very quickly, get in, get out. So before you're even aware anything is happening, they've already gone through the motions of the activity. They will request personal and financial information from you. And as I mentioned before, no legitimate company will ever ask you for any of that information via the phone or an email or a text message. And one other thing to look for is that they tend to be sloppy as well. So you can always validate that by looking at your email addresses. For example, you'll never get an email, you will never get a correspondence from a representative of Sagicor that comes from a Gmail account. So that's one way to look at it. You can also look for spelling mistakes. So they may have something that looks like Sagicor at a first glance, but then when you actually look at it a little closely, you recognize that, you know, a letter might be missing or something might be out of order. So just pay very close attention to that. There's a lot of grammar, spelling mistakes, and public addresses. No legitimate corporation will ever contact you from a open domain, public domain email source. So some rule of thumbs, if you ever encounter any of these things, you ignore the messages, you ignore them, you delete them. Or if you think there might be some validity to them, just pick up the phone and call your financial corporation, the government entity. You can also ask them for a point of reference, a point of contact. That is probably a surefire way, and a point of contact, and contact the institution directly to understand if there's any need for any type of information or any flags on your account or anything that needs to be addressed. And if you want to take it a step further, which is a little difficult, you can also try to contact local authorities, and they may be able to help remediate. But the point of it is that you don't want anyone being able to have access to your personal information. That's like, okay, so with that, we have another practice of safe passwords. Now, I know in a previous discussion, this was like a hot topic because it was made mention that, you know, as folks age, they tend not to remember a lot. They remember many things and keeping track of all the passwords, because you would appreciate that in order to keep your identity, your finances safe, you're going to have a mechanism by which that sits behind. And, you know, you're going to have to use a password or a sequence of some sort. So one way of doing that is creating really strong passwords. So strong passwords really are your first line defense against hackers. So you're encouraged to have passwords that are unique, not unique to you, in the sense that you don't want to use stuff like your date of birth or your children's date of birth or your anniversary, or anything like that, or your children's names or your pet names or anything. You don't want to use things that are sequenced, like numbers 1 through 8, or even the infamous password, you know. So you want to use things that are unique, but unique only to you and only that you know. So when creating passwords, you're looking to, you know, create a mix of letters, numbers, symbols, uppercase, lowercase. One thing that is a good rule of thumb that I often encourage older members of my family to do when they're creating passwords is, don't think about creating a unique word, think about creating a sentence, you know. Maybe, but, you know, keep it to yourself, of course, but maybe like the line of a song, line of a song you like, you know, it doesn't have to be the first line. It could be the line of just a line in a song that you like, a mix of words that you remember. But it's important to always keep those passwords complex enough not to be infiltrated, but also memorable, so that you know and can keep track of them pretty easy. A rule of thumb is a password about 12 characters long. In the past, they used to go 8, but now we're creeping up in length. So we're getting more to like about 12 characters. And then if you can't remember, or you think it's a struggle to remember, they're also password managers, and they're basically like digital safes that you can store your password securely. They can even generate passwords for you. So they can generate random sequences of characters, numbers, symbols, so that, you know, you don't have to come up with it off the top of your head. It's not something that anybody can directly link to you. And it also maintains them in a pretty secure manner, so you can always reference them back. And then there's two-factor authentication, and it's encouraged wherever you can for whatever digital assets that you have or resources that you're utilizing, that you can utilize. Two-factor authentication is available. Please utilize it. It utilizes something you know, and then something that's given, something that you know and something is given to you. So it could be a code, it could be a picture, whatever it is. But those two pieces of information together to create an identity for you really will help secure you in your digital identity and your digital space. And all of those things come together to help you manage securely your online and your financial security. Managing your finances online has become a very convenient way for us to conduct business, whether it be banking, insurance, whatever, paying our bills, but it also is very risky if you're not careful, right? So there are just a couple, rules of thumb that you pay attention to when you want to bank and do your finances securely. So the first thing first is to use a secure connection. And when we say that, we're going to talk about avoiding public or open Wi-Fi connections or access points. And you want to avoid those areas because that traffic is open to anyone who has access to that network. And you would appreciate then that if that access is open, if someone can then intercept to get your password to connect to your online banking. And once they have that identity there, they can then go in and manipulate the movement of money in your accounts. We talk about online banking, but also if you're using your credit card as well with these online connections, folks are able to gather your credit card information as well. And then they can go off, use that for their own uses. So you want to really avoid public Wi-Fi networks, like doing your banking. If you want to make a call on WhatsApp, sure, but definitely avoid it for any of your personal financing information. Always make sure that after you have done you've completed your banking transactions online or via any of these platforms, that you log out after your use. Most well-architected platforms will time out your sessions and automatically log you out as a ways to protect you, but it's always a really great rule of thumb to log out after you've completed your financial sessions. And then thirdly, being aware, because as much as we are going to try to protect ourselves from potential risks, something might happen. But the faster you're alerted of it, the quicker you can remediate it. So by all means, if you have mechanisms in your financial platforms, banking platforms, wherever, where you can receive notifications or alerts for transactions you performed, whether it was via your card, online, so that you get notifications and you could be aware of anything that happens that's potentially suspicious. So if you know that you're sitting at home, your cards are in your bag, and you get an alert on your phone that a transaction has gone through, you know that immediately so that you can contact your financial institution and have your card blocked, have the issue investigated, and that, limits the access that folks have to your funds. And then we have our device and security updates. Now, I know this might be a little pesky, but there are devices, iOS, Android, whichever team you're on, They're constantly rolling out updates. Now, these updates are not just irritants to us. They're actually actively helping patch vulnerabilities within our system, within our devices, which can potentially be open spaces and loopholes for persons to access your devices. Again, you could appreciate that any window of opportunity where folks can, they'll utilize it so that they are able to intercept your information. So pay close attention to that. Some of your updates might just be superficial, but a lot of them, quite a few of them, especially operating system updates, will speak directly to vulnerabilities and open spaces in your hardware, software, that could be potential points for persons to access your devices. So always pay close attention to them. You can schedule if it's a little annoying and you're in the middle of something, you can always schedule them. I know Android, I'm not an iOS user, but Android does allow you to defer them for a time. So you can do it actually while you're asleep, and it's automatic, and your devices are always up to date, always secure, and you can have a better measure of comfort where that is concerned. And then as far as leaving your devices accessible, again, I know some folks may say another password to remember, but it's always good to lock your devices. Some sequence, some code, their patterns, their numbers, and then we have biometrics. And by means, you can use face recognition, you can use your fingerprint, and the technology has improved. I know folks have said, well, sometimes it doesn't read your fingerprint or your face, but the technology has improved so significantly that the likelihood of that irritation or where your biometrics are not being read is dramatically and drastically reduced. So we will encourage you, those two things when you're actually thinking about securing yourself, think about your devices. So one, always remember, keep your devices up to date. Run those fixes, those security fixes when they pop up for your operating systems and your apps, and then secure your physical device. So what you want to do is ensure that you have a PIN or a pattern, or you enable your biometrics so that folks don't easily have access to your devices. Okay, so I touched on this a little on a bit earlier, and this is about using public Wi-Fi and safe public Wi-Fi specifically, and then we're going to touch a little bit about safe browsing. So public Wi-Fi you typically see in places like malls, you see them in airports, you get them in hotels, restaurants even, and those, as I mentioned previously, are really risky environments for folks to conduct financial business or any financial transactions on their devices of any sort. Your traffic can be intercepted by threat actors who are looking to find ways and means to get access to your identity, get access to your credit card information, get access to your banking information. So it's always best to use a secure network whenever trying to conduct any type of financial business via your mobile devices, and when dealing specifically with websites, and primarily on websites, what people will go to do is like e-commerce, so you're doing your online shopping, entering credit card information. You want to ensure that you have an HTTPS connection versus the HTTP. Now, the HTTPS ensures that your connection is secured, is a secured tunnel. And one way that you can identify that is that there'll be a padlock, like a yellow gold padlock in your address bar. And once you see that on any site where you're going to do any type of financial transactions, you can rest assured that that's your indicator that you're on a secure site. But if you don't see that, I would discourage you from doing any financial transactions on the site. Be very careful, be very wary of that. And if, again, we will hope and will encourage you to only shop or only do these things on sites that are reputable. And if you have any concerns about that, any reputable site will have a means for you to get in contact and to speak to someone. And you can always contact their client, their customer service, and ask a question to ensure that you're actually navigating to the correct site, and you're using, you know, their actual site, not a spoof site, not a fake site that scammers have set up in order to capture your information. So you appreciate that a lot of these topics overlap and you're reiterating the same thing constantly. So you'll understand that it's incredibly important to protect your personal information. Persons can use your personal information, such as like your identification number, your identification number, your tax ID numbers, your tax ID numbers, any information that speaks specifically to you, even your address, your your address as well, in order to impersonate you. You'll be surprised how many pieces of if persons are able to access the right amounts of identification for you, how they can pretty much answer a lot of questions that are related towards you in the verification process. So you're encouraged to pay special attention with your personal information, especially on online platforms. So when we go on our social media and our Facebook, I know some folks post their birthdays, you know, and while you might think, oh, that's pretty, you know, okay to post, you know, we love our happy birthday post. You may also want to consider that because your birthday is an identification point for you as an individual. So it's you must pay a lot of attention to things that you may not even, like some things that you think are not things that you need to pay attention to. You may think, oh, what can you do with this? But a lot of little pieces can add up to can make a big story. So you need to be very careful how you do that, how you dispose of sensitive documents, you know, it might get technical, but for example, be careful of how you dispose things like statements, you know, because statements can carry account numbers. And again, little pieces of information can add up to one big picture. So you just want to be very, very careful of how you keep and how you house and how you dispose of personal documents. So if there's something that has financial personal information on it, I encourage you to shred it, so that it can, you know, folks can pick it up, find it, and use it by means to impersonate your identity or get access to your financial information. And if it's something that you need to hold on to, keep it in a locked, secure environment with very limited access. Persons have very limited access to it. Only persons you trust, quite frankly, has access to it. And then, sorry. Right, and then finally, what do you do in the event that something does happen? As I mentioned before, all of these are things that we will do to try to prevent cyber attack or a breaching your cybersecurity. However, nothing is fail-safe. There will be instances, or there may be an instance where you might fall prey to some sort of cyber attack or compromise. And it's always important to know what steps you can take and you need to take so that you can contain and control the situation. So the first thing you would do if your online banking or your financial systems are affected, the first thing you do, change your passwords immediately. If someone is able to access your account, the first thing, immediately change your password so that you can contain any type of access that individual will have to your accounts. if it is a situation where you have compromise with your card, if you have compromise with the same account online banking, please immediately contact your financial institution and file a report with the fraud department. And they will do the necessary investigations in order to, again, remediate or actually find and prevent the parties involved from doing any more damage. If you have any issues at all and you think that some of these things might be a little overwhelming, it is good to find find a tech savvy friend or family member that you trust. Because even though they're friend and family, some folks may not necessarily be trusted, but someone there who can help you navigate through the process. But I would strongly encourage you to get comfortable with speaking to your financial service providers. The members of the customer experience teams are very well experienced, they're very well versed, they're very well trained to handle these type of situations. And more, we are getting to the point where we communicate very effectively over to you guys, so that we can make you feel comfortable, be clear, and help through the process. Again, we're not wanting anything to happen, so we want to share the tips and the tools to ensure that you do not have an incident of this sort. However, if there is something of this nature, we want you to feel comfortable to come into us, explaining the situation, and we can take the necessary action in order to help you contain the situation and also to help remediate it as best as possible. So I hope the short tips and tools that I gave you were helpful. And now you have some knowledge where you can recognize or understand scams, how you can protect your personal and financial information and, stay secure online. But just to wrap it up, remember, folks will come and approach you all nice and well. And if they come to you, they ask you some personal information, financial information, always verify before sharing anything. If in doubt, call and contact your financial institution to confirm that they do in fact need this information from you and it is legitimate. Always conduct your business financially online via secure connections. Never avoid using public spaces, and try to stay as safe and alert as possible and continue to enjoy the benefits and the convenience that technology can offer you with minimal risk possible.
Thank you, Michaela. At this time, we're going to open the floor to any questions that you may have.
Hi, Dwayne, there's some questions in the chat.
There are. Okay. All right, so happy to see that there are 112 persons on there, quite a few. All right, so how can we check reliable antivirus software?
Okay, so checking and reliable antivirus software, there are a number of reputable sources for antivirus. I know there are a lot of apps and a lot of apps mostly people use, and there are a lot of offers out there for free antivirus software. Typically, as I said, free when it comes to these things aren't really the most reliable sources to take. So I would definitely avoid free offers for antivirus scanning. But definitely there are some reputable software vendors like McAfee, Norton. Those are the two that have been in the industry for quite some time. that you can definitely utilize for secure and reliable antivirus software.
Okay, so there's another question here. Is 4G secure to do sensitive transactions, that is logging into your bank account via mobile, etc.?
Typically, okay, typically, what am I saying, telecom networks, they will tend to be more secure than using public networks because they will be dedicated links. So that's could be tantamount to probably like using like your at-home service, but definitely avoid anything that is free and open. I know what I'm saying, we don't like to consume data of our devices because it can be a bit more expensive. You can consume a lot of it and it's pricey. But they are a more secure route than using a public, open, unsecured Wi-Fi connection than it is to use using your secured Wi-Fi connection, sorry, but than using an unsecured open source Wi-Fi connection that somebody can intercept.
Okay, so there's a statement question here in the chat that says it's extremely difficult to get someone on the phone in the banking sector to talk to, even if we are suspicious or get hit. How do we navigate this frustration, as you mentioned, to get to know our bank and comfortable speaking to them? So I'll take that question. I do understand and appreciate that it can be difficult sometimes to get someone on the phone, and that's usually because of the high volumes of calls that we receive every single day, which number in the hundreds. What I would say to you is, as Sagicor Bank, you can communicate with us through many different media. So in our mobile banking app, there is an in-app chat that you can use to communicate with us. You can also send us a message on social media. And the way our systems work, that message actually goes to our client experience center. And so someone from our client experience team will pick it up and communicate with you there as well. There are also ways to contact us on the website. So you can chat with the chatbot, who will then transfer you to a human if you ask for that. And you can also, there's a form on the website. Of course, that's not the first line because you want to talk to someone first. So you want to use the chat on the website, chat by social media. Of course, you can call or you can use the in-app chat in our mobile app. Just another question here. There's one banking institution that does not allow symbols and passwords. How can you create safe passwords in this case?
Okay, so you can still create a pretty safe password without using symbols. It would definitely need to be longer. And a longer password, as I mentioned, like you're thinking about like 12 characters for a secure password, but definitely a combination of the uppercase, lowercase, number of alphanumeric numbers and characters. You can create a pretty safe password. With that, again, there are password generators that will allow you to create a unique sequence using those specifications. And you can definitely utilize those if you think it's a little taxing for yourself to come up with one on your own. And then, as I mentioned as well too, you can use phrases. So you can use you can create a phrase, something that is randomized, and that can create a pretty secure password for you, even if you're not utilizing symbols.
Okay, so there's a comment here to remind persons to check your accounts monthly to validate all your transactions. I totally agree with that. You should really be checking your accounts daily, because if you wait too long, you don't recognize the change. So that it's a good habit to develop to check your accounts daily to understand what's going on with the movement that's happening there. And if you see something, then you say something. You contact us. There's a time frame in most banking institutions of 3 months where you can be reimbursed for fraudulent transactions. So what I'll say to that is institutions define their time frames, or it will be defined on our website and our terms and conditions. So I wouldn't blanket say all institutions do 3 months. but you need to know what your institution does based on their terms and conditions. Okay, so someone asked if Sagicor has a department that deals with fraud. If such a team exists, why is there not a direct contact number for the customer? That is because everyone that you reach out to or contact can handle the situation. So we do, of course, focus on security, and if there's a fraudulent situation, we will handle it expeditiously. But you can speak to our client experience team and they will handle the situation as expeditiously as possible. So there was someone who asked us to show slide 5 again. I'm going to try to do that right now. And I'm going to ask Michaela, while I do that, just to lean a little bit more into two-factor authentication. So what it really looks like. So we give it at a broad, high level, but I think we kind of need to explain what 2FA really means, so how it works in real life, practically what it is.
Okay. So two-factor authentication utilizes two pieces of authentication in order for you to access data or information or get access to a site. What that looks like is typically, we're familiar with the username, password, username, PIN process, where you create a profile, and when you create that profile, you create an identifier, whether it be a unique username or, we get frequently, most commonly, folks will use their email addresses as their unique identifier. And then you enter in a sequence, a password, passcode, login that you have created. So for the sake of this exercise, I'm going to use a password that as an example, which I hope that you never ever use in your life. So for example, I, Michaela, would create a profile and my username is MCB and MCB, and my password is password1. And I will be able to access websites or profile. Two-factor authentication creates a second step to that process. And what that does is that it utilizes a second communication channel or an app or a third-party application, which will create a code, a sequence, some sort of identifier that then I will need to enter in order to validate that I am who I am. So I made a reference previously to something you know and something you are told. So the something you know will be that password, that login, that PIN that you've created on your profile. The something that you're given would be your second factor authentication, which will come either via SMS. That's the most popular means by which folks will get a two-factor authentication delivered. You'll trigger, something will be triggered in the background. It sends you a text message with a sequence of numbers, characters, and then you place that on to the site and it validates and you're able to log in. That can also be shared via email as well. So you have email. You can also get a callback. So you can receive a phone call and a voice recording with that code being shared with you. And then there are also third-party apps. So you have things like Google Authenticator, you have Microsoft Authenticator, you have in more commercial environments, you have things like Okta and whatnot. And what that does is that it links your profile to a sequence of random numbers that are generated on random numbers or characters, a sequence that is generated on a cycle. And much like what you would do if you received that SMS code or that phone call with the code, you take that generated code and enter it in as well as a second form of authentication for your identity. So what that does is that even if an individual is able to get your password and your user ID as a first step of authentication, if they don't have access to these other secondary methods of authentication, they will still not be successful in being able to get access to your profiles.
Okay. So someone asked how safe is password manager, bearing in mind that we would literally be storing passwords online?
Okay, so again, I keep coming back to reputable pieces of application and applications and tools. So any reputable password manager will encrypt all of your information. There's also I would say there are also guidelines by which they would adhere to when it comes to keeping your information. And those are things that you would need to validate when you are utilizing these platforms. So many of these platforms will need to be SOC compliant. That's one thing. That's a security standard. I don't want to get too technical because that's not the nature of the conversation really. But there are standards and there are certifications that you can look for. So for example, when it comes to storing data, you think GDPR. And what that does is that in order for you to be GDPR compliant, you have to certify very stringently against a number of standards and rules to ensure that whatever information and data that is stored with you is stored very securely. If you're not identifiable, there's, if you don't want your information stored anymore, you can easily have it discarded. These sites will give you information on how long they keep your information, how they, keep their information, how they discard it, those timelines and whatnot. So the emphasis here is to not, you have a password managers, but you don't go with the freest one. And you do the prerequisite research, you understand who are reputable, you understand the standards that a secure password manager should adhere to. But at a high level, don't want to, rule the, don't want to necessarily bore the audience or confuse the audience with like the technicalities of it. But any reputable password manager will follow heavy encryption standards. They will be secure. They will follow compliance standards, which ensure that your passwords and your information is kept secure and safe.
Good. And so for those of you who may be wondering, GDPR stands for General Data Protection Regulation. It's a European Union law that protects personal data. And it, of course, is considered the world's strongest privacy and security law. So it's GDPR compliant, it's strong. All right, so at this stage, I'm going to ask, I have a giveaway. So it really is, it's a device that will clean your phone for you. It's a UV device and it also wirelessly charges your phone. So if you have a phone out, it's wirelessly enabled, uses to charging, you can just put it on top of the device and it will charge. And so I'm going to ask a question. What I will ask though is that, well, I guess I'll see who raised their hand first because it usually gives a number. So I'm going to ask a question and then you guys can raise your hand and I'll just put on you in order. You just let me know the answer to the question. Whoever answers first gets that giveaway, which I will, of course, leave at the office, the BARP office, and you guys can collect there. So we mentioned it earlier in the conversation, and I'll ask, what's the first thing you do if you fall victim, to a cyber attack? What is the first thing you do if you fall victim to a cyber attack? Michaela mentioned it earlier. We'll see who was paying attention. And we have Angela Sutton, who's first on the blocks. So Angela, you can unmute and tell us. I'm not. Yes.
Good evening.
Hi, good evening.
Thank you. The first thing you should do is change your password.
That is fantastic. Thank you, Angela. I see Jenna put it in the chat, but Jenna didn't follow the rules of the giveaway. So you gave Angela the answer, even if she didn't know, I'm sure she did. So congratulations. We can all congratulate you by using your reactions. And I'll leave your Sagicor Bank branded gift at BARP.
The BARP office? Okay. Thank you so much.
Unless, of course, you want to come to Sagicor Bank, we would welcome you here as well.
Either or.
Okay, so I'm going to share the last slide on our presentation. And it just shows you one of our adverts, but it's geared towards you. And that's our .silver account. So if you do have a smartphone and you want to whip out your phone, open your camera, scan the screen, it will take you to download the Sagicor Bank mobile app. But the .silver account is an account geared towards persons over the age of 60. With that account, you get 2% interest per annum, which is paid on the minimum balance quarterly. And you do not pay withholding tax on the interest garnered on that account. So I do encourage you, if you're not a Sagicor Bank client as yet, to avail yourself of the higher yield interest instrument that we have for persons over the age of 60. Of course, if you are under 60, because I know BART membership starts at age 40, we also have an expert saver account that gives you 2% interest per annum. Of course, that one is subject to withholding tax. So I encourage you guys to download our app, sign up, which is very, very easy. It could take us as little as 10 minutes. You just need one valid ID and one proof of address, and open your accounts today. .silver for those of you who want that 2% without withholding tax, and if you're over the age of 60, and the expert saver account for those persons who are not yet in those golden years. And with that, I will hand right back over to Scott, who will do a closing. But I want to say thank you guys very much for being so participative and staying with us for the 59 minutes you've been on this call.
Yes. Thank you very much. On behalf of BART, I would like to extend my deepest gratitude to the team at Sagicor for this evening's presentation. As you know, cybersecurity is constantly evolving, and we need regular sessions to stay on top of this phenomenon. Members can review this presentation on BART's YouTube channel, and we encourage you to share the link with friends and family. It is clear that we must take control of and responsibility for our actions online. And as it was mentioned earlier, the best way to do that is through education. I would also like to thank the team at Sagicor, Dwayne Worrell and Michaela Catwell, for informing us, and the BART board officers and the team who coordinated the event, and to you, our members, especially, who we are constantly working to empower. Thank you again, ladies and gentlemen, and good night.